Hi and welcome back to my channel UiPath with Jeppe. Today we're looking at the add and remove log fields activities and how to use them. But before we get started, please remember to subscribe to the channel if you like what you see, and also if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. But let's get to it. So I'm inside Studio in an empty file here, and this file is called dummy, and this is the starting point for this project when I deploy it. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to do a simple log message at the info level, and I will just say this is our log message, and we're going to publish our automation, and we'll just click next and publish. And as soon as the project has been built or deployed, we are going to go into Orchestrator. And in this folder called Automations, we're going to add a new process. That process is going to be from that new package called Extra Log Fields. And we'll just click next, and create. So now we have a process for this automation that we just built. And we're just going to run it. And when we run it, we'll see it start up on my unattended robot machine here in the background. And it's not really going to do much on that machine. So we'll see the machine log off again in just a second as soon as the automation has run. And there we go. The job was successful. And if we take a look at the log for this job, we can see that there's a bunch of messages in here. And if we look at just any random message, we can see all of the fields that are logged by default. But what if we wanted to add more information to these log details? Well, let's close the log details and jump back into Studio. And then I'm going to search for log fields in my activities pane. And we can add a new log field here. And then we will need to add to a collection of fields. So I'll click this little editor button. So let's just add a field called weekday. And what we are going to log into this field is going to be the current weekday. As a string value. And we'll click save. And now it's going to add that value to any logs being written. So this log field is actually being added after the log message that we're writing manually, but we'll publish it all the same. There we go. And we'll jump back into Orchestrator, go into our automation, our processes, and we will upgrade this process to the latest version. There we go. And now we're going to run it. And just as before, we should see it log into the unattended robot machine, run the job, and then we can take a look at the values inside of the log fields. And there we go. The job was successful. And if we open the log, we can see that now we have a little bit more information here because we added this log fields activity. So before the activity or the log field was added, if we look at this log message closed, we can see that there's no such thing as a day of week value in here. If we close that and then go to the last log message up here, we can see that now there's a weekday field containing today's weekday. And that's basically what this is all about, is logging more information than what is being logged by default. Now, a good example of this being used in practice is inside of the Robotic Enterprise Framework. And in fact, in my project here, which actually is a Robotic Enterprise Framework project, if we go into the initialization state and go into this if first run sequence, we can see at the bottom here that a log field is being added that supposedly adds the business process name to the log. So if we look at the details for this, we can see that it adds a field called log f underscore business process name. And the value that it adds to this field is the business process name that it finds inside our configuration file. So in our project, if we go to the data folder here into the config file, inside of the standard config file for Robotic Enterprise Framework process, we have this field called log f business process name. And this field is being added at the very beginning of an execution of the Robotic Enterprise Framework automation. So every time something is being logged for the entire duration of this automation, it's going to add the business process name. So we can always see inside of the log files for a ReFramework process, what business process are we actually executing. Now there's another activity, if we go back to the activities pane, called remove log fields. And if we go back into the dummy file and then add that activity, we can add to this collection the field that we actually want to remove. So in here, we simply add weekday and save. And if we now publish the process again, there we go, and go back into Orchestrator, go to automations, processes, and upgrade this extra log fields process to the latest version and run it. And the job completes. And if we go to the log details again, we can see that, of course, at the beginning, this is our log message. We don't have the weekday name. If we go to sort of the middle where we added the weekday name but didn't remove it yet, we will see the weekday. And if we go to the very end after we removed the weekday field, we can see that the log field with the weekday details has been removed. So a good example of this activity being used, the remove part, is also in the Robotic Enterprise Framework. And this is a part that a lot of people, I think, miss when working with the framework. So if we go back into Studio, into the framework project here, and go to actually the project pane over on the left, and we go into this folder called framework, we have this file called set transaction status. And the set transaction status, if you're not familiar with the framework, basically sets the status of the current transaction after the transaction has been attempted. And three things can happen. Either the transaction is a success, or a business rule exception occurs, or a system exception occurs. And in each of these instances, if we dive into, for example, the success sequence here, we can see down here at the bottom that we actually log the success with additional logging fields. And by default, a number of fields is being added to the log fields. The transaction status, transaction number, ID, and there is room for more fields here. Transaction field 1 and 2, these are just sort of dummy fields that can be added. But these are added, then a log message is being written, and then those fields are being removed again. And why are they removing them again? Well, because when you add a log field, it is for the duration of the entire execution of that automation. And you may or may not want the same additional log fields to be used for, say, transactions that are successful, transactions that run into a business rule exception, and transactions that run into a system exception. So if we go into the system exception, we also have this block that adds additional log fields down here. But you may want to vary what fields are logged when a system exception occurs as opposed to when things are successful. And that is where the remove log fields activity comes in really, really handy. So if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. That's it. I hope you found it useful. I will hopefully see you in the next one. Until then, take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.